Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Better You podcast. I'm joined by Ali Bailey and Ravi Patani. I did want to talk about some things that we have coming up. I know Ali has some things to mention, as well as Ravi, that I think are very exciting. One, in a few weeks, we're releasing a webinar that we did in conjunction with Symmetry Alliance about displacement, which I think is like you should definitely check out because it talks about what happens when you lose your job, when you get laid off, how difficult that might be, the mental health struggles that go with that. And it's really powerful, really good stuff that, uh, you know, we're very proud of. And I think everybody should check it out. Ali, I know you wanted to bring up some stuff as well.
Yes, thank you, Aaron. So, good morning, everybody. Excited to be here on our podcast. We're very excited to announce a new series of social media content designed to support not just community well-being, but also academic success. We've been making some content for psychology students, again, along with the community itself, and we'll be sharing some specialized resources and different diagnosis and treatment goals that us clinicians use to be able to help prepare people for their exams. So we're very excited to be launching that content. And whether you're, studying for a degree, exam, or simply looking to just improve your mental health literacy, we're going to be here for you.
And the link to our other channel, which has a lot of that stuff, called 3 Minute Therapies, is in the chat. Robbie?
Oh, yes. Good morning, guys. Happy to be here as well. As we grow our partnerships or just based around the mental health equals financial health, and vice versa, we're connecting with a lot of individuals and firms across states. And one of the people from Edward Jones reached out, and we've got a webinar coming up in 2 weeks as well. I believe the time is going to be May 20th. So we'll start our marketing and everything like that very soon. But please join us, ask questions. That's the main thing. And then the whole purpose is for us to give you knowledge from the professional panelists that we have on board. Thank you.
Awesome. So one final thing to get all the obligatory, hey, this is what we have going on. A big thank you to our sponsor, Lamco Wellness, for letting us continue to kind of put the message of mental health out there into the world. But yeah, I did want to say last month we talked about Stress Awareness Month because that's what last month was. And this month is Mental Health Awareness Month, which I'll be honest, I when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay. Not sure who made those decisions to do that, but it seemed like there's a lot of overlap. But at the same time, because we evangelize about this sort of stuff all the time, great. I'll take an extra month to talk about mental health issues and be like, hey, this is our time to shine. Um, I know, Ali, you and I were talking about the DSM yesterday and how there's a lot of changes to it. And I'm not a clinician. I've literally never read the DSM. I just listen to you guys or Tracy or somebody else tell me about things that are on it. But I did read something the other day where it was another clinician and they were basically making the argument that DSM is constantly being updated. And that's good, because our understanding of all of these disorders and everything that's going on keeps changing, and we need to keep updating people like, hey, this is what's going on, this is where we're at. But the thing that isn't really keeping up with that is our delivery methods for the help and for the changes and for the information that is being updated in the DSM. So, yeah, I would love to hear basically what you were talking about yesterday, but
Yeah.
for anybody who's listening.
Absolutely. So, for those who are listening and wondering, what is the DSM, right? Because the DSM originally started as the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, but there's a lot of different versions. So, it's interesting because over time we evolve. Disorders may, well, we use the word disorders, right, when we're diagnosing our clients, but different symptoms evolve. We see different things going through our bodies, our minds over time. So, um, right now, the DSM-5 TR, which is the fifth edition text revision, has a lot of different changes. I don't know if either of you have ever heard of like excoriation disorder or factitious disorder before.
The second one sounds familiar, but that could just be because it's a fun word to say. So,
Not
Yeah, they're different. Yes. Go ahead, Robbie. I didn't want to cut you off.
no, no, no. I was gonna say I've not heard of it on my end.
No. No, yeah, when I first read the words, I was actually studying for my examination. I was like, I don't know what those mean. So, yes, the DSM or Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders does have quite a bit of content, different codes for us to diagnose different symptoms and also different durations of time of, how long you would present with certain symptoms to then qualify essentially for the disorders. So, factitious disorder actually in previous DSM-3 was Munchausen syndrome. So I'm sure that
oh, I
that
know that
might
one.
sound familiar. Yeah. So in the revision, which I just love talking about this stuff, there's two different types of factitious disorders. One imposed on ourself, so maybe replicating an illness for maybe attention seeking purposes, things of that nature, or factitious disorder imposed on another. So that's really where we see maybe a caregiver or guardian taking on that caregiving role to essentially also have some sort of attention seeking purposes.
So, I mean, first off, Munchausen syndrome, I feel like we all associate with the documentaries and the movies around it. Also, there's a movie with Robin Williams in it called The Adventures of Baron Munchausen from like the 70s or 80s that I saw when I was younger. And when I first heard the term Munchausen syndrome, I was like, what does this have to do with this? Because it was like this crazy guy who just did mythical things. Like he literally flew by pulling himself up on his by his bootstraps, type stuff. So if anybody knows why it's called or it was called Munchausen syndrome, please let me know because that's been bugging me for years now. Um, but I think we all associate it with what we see in pop culture. I think the story of Gypsy Rose is like the big one where like here was a real problem and then it became a big. But I also want to say I'm fairly certain that I have seen lesser versions of this play out in real life. Specifically, what used to be called Munchausen by proxy. Um, I don't know what it's called now. But I've definitely seen where you have parents who, um, for lack of a better word, they're hypochondriacs, but their hypochondria doesn't affect them. It doesn't relate on them. It relates on their kids. Like their kids are always suffering from something. Their kids are always, um, ill or need better care or whatever. And um, I think that it's a really it's a really interesting thing to look at because from what I've seen, where I've seen like, hey, I'm pretty sure that's what's going on here. And again, I am not a clinician, but from what I've seen, it's kind of weird because it does come from a place of love, but it also is just like this very, for lack of a better word, toxic and almost malevolent love that just makes things worse because everybody that I've known where I've been like, hey, I'm pretty sure this is what's going on, like the kids suffered worse grades, harder like more difficulty making friends, just like more difficulty in life in general. And I feel like the parent that was doing this was always like, oh, it's because they're sick all the time. And it's like, no, it's because you're keeping them from the rest of the world, you know? Um, I don't know if either of you have experienced it, but and maybe it's just, my family friends where I grew up, but like I've seen at least two where I'm just like, Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what went on.
Yeah. Yeah, and without all of the evidence, right, it's hard to diagnose, especially without the, credentials of being a clinician, right? Like we'd have to take the time to certainly observe a said situation or person to be able to make that best determination. But
How
kind of
does
going
that happen?
with
How does that happen? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
oh,
I'm just very curious about this.
well, and again, every situation is a little bit different. So like what I was going to say is like factitious disorder is more driven by like an unconscious need to assume like the sick role or that caregiving role. But like another term that we use in the DSM is called malingering. Have you guys heard of that one? Like but that's more
Sounds
of like
familiar.
a behavioral drive, driven by more conscious thoughts to have what we would say like an external gain. So there's the malingering, but then there's also the unconscious need to assume that caregiving or sick role. So, it just depends on how the person presents. Maybe like you were saying in your example, the caregiver or the parent, like, is it more for their gain or is it like an unconscious, like, I just want to make sure that my child's okay, sort of a thing. But that would just take time for us, in the clinical role to be able to see and say, that specific determination.
That makes sense. I feel like, and I know we've talked about it before, but one of the things that really interests me about mental health is that unlike with so many other things, there's no clear line of like, hey, this is what it is. It's a lot of um, you know, okay, we've got to compile the evidence and then make a decision based off of the evidence. Um,
Yeah.
which I guess is more like law, which I think is kind of funny because I don't associate those two things as very tied together, except for law is very stressful and you know we had a episode not too long ago where we were working with a law firm and talking about the stress effects of being in litigation on yourself and how mental health can help that. But I don't associate the process as the same. But it is kind of the same because you're just looking at a lot of evidence and saying, okay, based off of this evidence, this is most likely the case.
Mhm.
And that is like that's kind of crazy to me, and it's also very hard to relate that to other people, especially because mental health is still healthcare, and in healthcare, like I have a bruise, I have an infection, I have these things. It's just a yes or no issue. Um, but I find it super fascinating. Sorry to derail the conversation as I
No.
often tend to do.
It's all right. No, I like it because it's true. We have the tool, the manual to be able to work alongside with our clients and identify what those symptoms may look like. I think we've mentioned it on different events and podcasts and things alike that, sometimes we might see co-occurring disorders, which is where we might have, two things going on at, the same time, but trying to also find the different approaches as a clinician to be able to say, hey, let's assess the situation. Let's come up with that treatment plan, the roadmap essentially of what we can do. Because I think again, in the DSM, if you have the time to open it and look at it, you will see that many of the diagnoses show differential diagnosis and also how sometimes they can actually mirror each other and they can, again, co-occur. So being able to identify like treatments that can help with one or more disorder, it's certainly helpful. And that's why kind of going back to what you said earlier, Aaron, about mental health awareness month and how certain months of the year signify that. I mean, I think mental health is an important issue that we should discuss every single day because to our point here, it's always evolving. The DSM, I believe, is going to be maneuvered potentially in the next few years to also, signify other disorders. I don't know if you guys heard about that. They're saying next year they're going to be looking at some revisions, especially when it comes to complex PTSD.
That's one that's near and dear to my heart because I might have shared this before, but with the other disorders that I was diagnosed with, there was a lot of things that I was doing in my life when I was in my early 20s that just there was no effect of all the different treatment types and everything that I was trying. And then I worked with a different therapist who was basically like, hey, you know, you had a really terrible childhood, at least in parts. Maybe we should try treating you for complex PTSD rather than for all this other stuff that has the same symptoms. And it was like a light switch. Like as soon as we went to that, so much stuff started clearing up for me. So much stuff started being easier for me to do. And I think that a lot of people, especially like where I grew up and in you know, for lack of a better word, more impoverished, more underserved areas, um, people where they in those areas, that is a huge part of the struggle is that we're all kind of together in this PTSD of like, hey, it's a constant struggle because of X, Y, and Z. You know, like there's a quite literally a meth dealer down the street or something like that, and we don't recognize, hey, this is having an impact on our mental health, which is having an impact on our performance, and we don't treat it. And we just kind of remain part of you know, you hear about it all the time, the cycle, the vicious cycle of X, Y, and Z happening over and over and over again. And for me, that's why complex PTSD, which my therapist happily referred to often as childhood PTSD, because it's in his experience, it was usually something that happened during childhood, um, is such a big one to me. And it's so overlooked because it's ongoing, and we develop the defense mechanisms to live with it. So we don't even see the impact that it has on our life, on our ability to perform, um, until we're out of it. And then we go, oh my gosh, that was insane how much that was just royally messing up my life. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's me on my soapbox.
That's okay. No, and I appreciate that, Aaron, because like we're talking about, there's different durations for different disorders. Like I can even tell you just from opening the DSM itself, seeing the area of post-traumatic stress disorders and beyond, like we have adjustment disorder, we have post-traumatic stress, we have different timelines of when we would see this. So that's why I'm very excited as a clinician to be able to see, CPTSD, in the diagnostic tool soon, because I have friends personally that experience a lot of well, symptoms of trauma from events that they've experienced, but also clients, right? Because I've seen people that have reached out to intake saying, hey, would it be possible to get diagnosed with this? But our evidence-based treatments and diagnoses that don't support that right now. So it's coming. It is coming.
So go ahead, Robbie. I saw you unmuted.
No, I feel like DSM does a great job with the questionnaire in terms of like the level 1 through 5 that Ali mentioned, where you can like take a questionnaire and have a psychiatric evaluation done on those as well. So if anyone do feel like they are going through something, please feel free to check out the psychiatric.org as well for those questionnaire.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Totally slipped my mind, but that's a good one to share. And I think that a lot of time, because I used to do this, I would do this, and I still do this to a lesser extent, where and I know that my family does this, where I do want to reinforce the next step of it. Like test it, see like, oh, maybe this is what's going on, or oh, maybe this. But the next step is talking to somebody, you know, getting out there, having the conversation with the therapist, having the conversation with the psychiatrist, whoever it may be. If you're not quite at that point, which I get, talk to your friends and family. Um, like you would be surprised how much weight it takes off of your shoulders when you're like, oh, hey, I might be this or I might be going through that or whatever. Um, and you just let people know, even if they're jerks about it, which has happened to myself and friends. Um, it's still a huge weight off. So yeah, next step after you're kind of there, talk to people. Ali, I know you wanted to say something.
Yes, thank you. And I think talking is definitely an underspoken, no pun intended, underspoken tool for therapy, right? Because sometimes it is difficult to establish care with a therapist. We might feel afraid to reach out, but that's like the best first step to, you know, having that help and that support for yourself. So something that I mention as a clinician is, sometimes people will get a little deterred from reaching out because they hear the word assessment, they hear the word questionnaire, but kind of like I was talking about a little earlier on our podcast today, you know, we're on a roadmap together when we're working alongside of a clinician, we're working alongside of a provider, right? Like these aren't us judging you based on what you've been through, but it's more or less guiding us on that roadmap along with you to know what next steps to be taken and to help you. Some of the questionnaires, I mean, they can sound scary, like a trauma screening questionnaire. Really, it's like 10 items that, we just kind of go through with you and, explore and try to see exactly, what your symptoms present as, because that allows us as the, professionals to help you further on your journey. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. I will say that's why I'm such a big fan of what you do, Ali, and the intake process at Lamco Wellness because I've I've had this experience where I'm filling out a questionnaire as part of the intake process and they're asking me very invasive and whatever questions and you're supposed to like write it down. And my instinctive response is that's none of your damn business. Like, and I'm not putting that on paper for for other people to to potentially read. Like maybe if I feel comfortable, I'll share this with my therapist, but I'm not sharing this with whoever happens to be reading this. Um, and I think that for me personally, that is a downside of the questionnaire and the individual like, hey, I'm just filling out these things process, um, is that for me, it was just no, I'm not doing that because like it makes me incredibly uncomfortable to write that down and put that out there into the world. And I think it's a lot better to have somebody that you can talk to and just say it because it's a lot to say it sometimes. And I think that writing it is a lot more because not only are you writing it, but then it's staring back at you. And then you're giving it to somebody else. So it's I don't know. For me, it was always just way more, and I like would get offended when I would have to like write responses for it.
Sure. Yeah, it's personal, it's definitely us being in our most vulnerable states of mind and maybe events in our life. Maybe we've been through something like financial hardship or, other difficulties in our life. And, that can really pose a lot of feelings of anxiousness, but also isolation. And we might even like disassociate from ourselves in certain things. So, when you know, challenged with that, questionnaire and we're just kind of sitting on a computer or, writing it down without a clinician, I think that's more difficult because then it's like, okay, now I'm actually facing head on what happened. And, I need that guidance. I need that person along with me on my journey, to help me.
Yeah, yeah. I think that that's a huge part uh, of mental health is that it is so hard, and I would say impossible. I'm sure there's somebody out there who's gone through a bunch of stuff and they got through it all on their own, which honestly shenanigans if you are saying that, but I'm sure there's somebody saying that. But I think it's impossible to go through on your own. Like there's just so much, there's so much so many blind spots that you don't think you have, that you do have. There's so much where it's too much. Like you need help, you need your friends, you need your family, you need a therapist. Um, and that guidance is really essential. And I think that one of the things that people struggle with now is the lack of community. Um, because I think that before the community would kind of reinforce norms and behaviors, and if you had an issue with that, you left the community or you stuffed it down. Um, but now with kind of communities being very easy to just adjust and set up and everything because of the connectivity, um, there's no there's this ability to be just set adrift. It's a lot easier to just be adrift. I did a terrible job explaining that, but I'll let it go.
Well, that's certainly an evolution, right? Like we're always expanding in any span of life, right? But especially with mental health, as we do more research, as we see more clients, as we find new tools itself to be able to help people, not just meeting them where they're at, because this is my perspective, right? Like, let's say I'm in a crisis, and maybe to you that's not something you would categorize as a crisis, right? But meeting the person where they are and whatever it is that's going on, I could have went outside and my car didn't start. For me, that's a crisis because I can't go to and from my home. But to other people, they have tools where they can jumpstart the car and they're on their way. They're able to go to the gym, they can go grocery shopping. But to me, in that exact moment, that's a real life crisis. So having having that support, like you said, Aaron, family, friends, whomever around us, but also knowing that people are going to meet us where we are in those moments, those critical moments where we need them. It's helpful because then we know, okay, this is what we can do on our own, our support system, but also having the backing of, the awareness of mental health is important because without it, it'd be difficult. So, that's why I really appreciate, like, I know a lot of clinicians get upset when there's revisions to the DSM, but it just means we're cleaning up our knowledge. We're cleaning up new ways of trying to find what can help our clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Ali, when you said that, how do you meet them, right? How do you meet them where they are? What does
Yes.
that process look like?
And I mean, I will tell you sometimes depending on the severity of where people are and I know where they are, right? Like I'm in Florida, we're all in different areas, right? So I'm not flying necessarily to somebody and meeting them right next to them. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm seeing your presentation, I'm hearing your concerns, and just being that person to listen and to understand exactly what it is. Because I think, for example, the hypothetical crisis situation I just shared, let's say I had to be somewhere and my car didn't start. I don't think I would be able to thoroughly explain my crisis, right? Because maybe I'm upset, maybe I'm crying, maybe I'm angry, maybe I'm just laughing, like, well, this was the last straw. So being equipped and empathetic and being able to meet the person where they are in that exact moment of how they're emotionally and mentally feeling, that's what I would say of meeting them where they're at.
Yeah. I think that's very crucial, and that is a skill, one that I am terrible at, but it's a skill that takes a long time to develop, to be able to see where a person is mentally and be there with them and help them get to a place that they would rather be. Um, this is so so crazy, but like when I think of that skill, I think of Mr. Rogers. I don't know if Allie's laughing. Robbie, do you know who Mr. Rogers is?
Actually, do not know.
Oh my gosh. He was a kids show host for like decades. I think he might like reruns might still be on there on PBS. Um, but like he was just this old man who was like the sweetest old man, and everything was okay. It didn't matter what happened, everything was okay. Um, and like I've read stories about his life, and like him as a person is way more than him on the show, like in terms of being a good person. Um, but like that is like he's the only famous person that I can think of that really ever demonstrated that ability to always be able to meet people where they're at.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I like his positivity. And I'm just thinking back to when I was a kid, like, when you're a kid and you're chaotic and you're running around, you're playing with all your toys and stuff, like calmness doesn't really exist unless you're asleep or you're just content with what you're doing as a child. Um, so when I was laughing at that when you were mentioning it, but um, sometimes though, when we're seeing a client or somebody that's reaching out to us in their most vulnerable moments, like telling them that it's going to be okay can be helpful, but depending on where they are, and that's why again it's crucial to meet somebody where they're at, right? Like maybe they don't want to hear that it's going to be okay. Maybe they want to feel, hey, like it's okay that I'm not okay right now, and these are going to be the steps to make it be okay, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, speaking of a child, have you guys heard of the Happy song?
No, do you want to sing it?
No. So it's I was my nephew is back in town, and then my sister was just like playing the song for him, and then like out of like he was doing his own thing, minding his own business, and out of like all of a sudden he just got so happy, got excited, started like dancing up and down. So apparently there's a scientist and a psychologist who created a song based on like have for the baby to be happy and calm. And it was like a survey that they had done like between like 1,000 groups of people. Um, so I wonder if something like that can be done for humans, or like creating a song scientifically to make them happier in the moment.
Yeah, I
Make them
like
not-
that. Yeah, I mean,
So,
music. Oh, I was just gonna jump in.
no, go
Like,
ahead.
music is that's also an underspoken therapy tool, right? Like, if we're going through something, writing a song, producing a song, it can really be great, because it gets our feelings out there. But maybe somebody else who's listening to it, they might feel the same way. Maybe not the entire song, but I know, especially when I listen to music and um, I kind of gravitate towards calming music if I'm feeling stressed out, or, maybe I'm going through a life event and that song just resonates with me. I don't know. Have you guys had like a playlist where you've listened to it and it just helps you maybe in those more difficult moments, or just kind of uplifts you? Or
100%. Especially when I was a teenager, like but I my psychiatrist and my therapist probably hated me because I was just very resistant to everything, but like music got through. Music was always like what could calm me down and everything. And even now, um, it it doesn't have the same effect. I feel like I wish it did. But there's other stuff, there's other tools that I've learned to kind of help with that. Um, but I can say as a personal story, my wife and I are expecting our first child in October, which is terrifying and exciting all at the same time. Um, and But one of the things that we've started doing and we're going to continue to do until the birth is play music for the child, and specifically play certain songs that we found uplifting, and because we want our son, it's going to be a boy, but to have that relationship with music. And the number one song on that playlist is Dobie Gray's the Give Me the Beat Boys. I don't know the name of this. Drift Away. Drift Away is the name of the song. I don't know if you either of you two have heard that, but that's one that always like, yeah, it's a good song. Check it out.
No, you're right. And I remember being, well, I don't remember consciously being very little, but my parents used to, sing lullabies and things to me to help to soothe me. And I think even my younger sibling. But, growing up in a musically inclined family, like I took it on myself throughout school to, learn 11 different instruments, like guitar was my main one. So, growing up where, like your parents, when you come out in the living room in the morning, have on 80s, new wave, 90s music and just like music all the time, it just becomes a part of your life. So, music can certainly be therapy to me.
Robbie, I saw you were going to say something.
No, I just never heard of that song before. So I wonder if you can incorporate the happy song as well now.
Check it out. I don't know if we can do this, but if we can do this, if somebody wants to put in the comments a link to like the music video on YouTube, because like it's an older song, but it's just very it's drift away. Like that's the theme of the song is just you kind of listen to the music and drift away. And yeah, it's a beautiful song, and I am at the point where in my life now, especially now that I'm having a son, where I consciously am like, hey, I want to give people the tools that music gives, specifically my son, that music gives for your mental health and for your peace of mind. Because it really can. And sometimes it's a song like Drift Away that's very peaceful and melodic and kind of makes you feel good. And sometimes it's metal and you want to feel angry, and sometimes it's what's his name, I can't remember the song. Supermarket Flowers, Ed Sheeran. So
Um,
he has a song Supermarket Flowers. It's about his mom with cancer, and it's the saddest song I've ever heard. Like I tear up every time I listen to it. But sometimes it's that, and that's the amazing power I think of music that that we don't that we don't always see until we need it to just kind of express to us in a way what we're feeling so that it seems manageable.
yeah.
Also, there's a link to the to Drift Away because yeah.
Have you guys done, or Ali, if you know anything about laughter therapy? I feel like it's so fascinating. We're like mixing laughter, like laughing and like yoga, like combination where like you also like practicing breathing at the same time and laughing. So like one of the things like when I was young in India, we would have like gardens in the sense of like you can walk. It's like a park, but we call it garden there. And you'll just see a bunch of groups just doing laughing exercises. Like depending on no matter what, like how old you are or where you are in your life, you just go in this group and you just start laughing. And the teacher will like teach you like how to laugh or like make sure your breathing is done correctly so you can enjoy the laugh. And then it seems to be working a lot better for a lot of people. I don't know.
No, I've heard of it and just kind of throwing in about my physical wellness background. I always heard that laughter is a form of like cardiovascular exercise. Like it actually helps keep you in shape and tones your muscles because when you're happy, right? Like we're not having high levels of cortisol. We feel good, we feel um upbeat. So we're just going to continue with that good energy within us. But laugh therapy. I'm gonna have to look up where to go for a session because that sounds really cool.
It's like fake it till you make it, just laugh it off.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to be said of the the power of faking it till you make it, not just, in the sense of, your professional life, but also in the sense of your mental health. I will say from experience that it can go into the realm of toxic positivity. Because I've definitely been in places where like I'm just to the floor and beyond down and angry and upset or whatever. And then I'll have, friend, relative, teacher, whatever, be like, oh, well, just smile and you'll be fine. And I want to be like, I would be better if I could punch you in the face right now because, like, no, that's not going to work. Um, so I do want to recognize, like, yes, like there are types of therapy that work for a lot of things, and then there are types of therapy that don't work for a lot of things. And it's really important for us as people and as friends and family and everything like that to be able to recognize, and this goes back to what you were talking about, Ali, of the meeting people where they're at. What's the appropriate time and place for it? Um, like, I'm at a place where laugh therapy sounds amazing. Like that, I'm like, yeah, that would probably work for a lot of what's going on with me. Um, However, I've also been at a place where I've been told to smile or told to laugh, and it has just set me over the edge.
Mhm.
So I think that, again, to circle back to what we were talking about earlier, it's always important to feel where you are and to feel where the people around you are and kind of visit there versus like, hey, this is going to be the fix. And I think that's why a clinician is so important, is because, and they may not have all the answers. Like, I've had bad therapists, I've had good therapists, I've had psychiatrists, all of that stuff. Um, but their odds of knowing the answers are just a little bit better. Um, and I will say, on the flip side of that, I've also encountered clinicians where they just don't want to acknowledge things like laugh therapy. And they're just like, oh, that's not a real thing because we haven't done enough testing on it. And for me, as a client, if I'm in a bad space and here's something that might help me, I'm like, I don't care if there's been enough testing on it. Like, let's give it a shot because I'm looking for an answer. Give me an answer. Um, Sorry, that was a longer rant than I thought it would be, but there
That's
we go.
okay. No, and I also appreciate when maybe clients reach out and say, "Hey, like I've researched X therapy type, maybe like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And, I feel just based on my symptoms presentation that this would benefit me the most, right? So, of course, when working with a clinician, they would be able to make that best determination for you of like, hey, maybe we can integrate CBT, but also something else, maybe like dialectical behavioral therapy, where, we're really incorporating mindfulness. And as we were talking about laugh therapy, it dawned on me that that's a form of mindfulness training, like laughing, like being able to just let it out. Because as we know, like DBT, it's to build a life worth living. It's to feel good about yourself and the things around you. But I want to say that, and I know I'm kind of jumping around from what you said, Aaron, but sometimes what happens is we feel very alone. We feel isolated when we've been through something, right? So even if we're around 1,000 people or in our company, we can still feel alone. So it's always the goal of ensuring that we don't just feel good on our own, but we also feel good in the presence of other people, because that can be just such a isolating experience to feel loneliness and sadness.
Absolutely. I think that feeling of loneliness in the presence of other people, and I think we've all been there at some point in our life. And if you haven't, congratulations, I guess. But we've all, I think we've all been to that point where, like, you're surrounded and for whatever reason you still feel alone. I can say that feeling of loneliness, I think, just hits so much harder because you're like, why? What do I even do here? The prescription of for stopping feeling loneliness is be around other people, and now I'm around other people and I still feel lonely. Um, and I found, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but I found that when I was in those moments, it was more because I wasn't in touch with myself. you know like I didn't understand who I wanted to be and who I needed to be in order to to be the person that I wanted to be. Um, and so I was just kind of drifting. I don't know if this is true for everybody, but I do think that the the difficulties that one might experience in the sense of being alone and in the sense of a lot of things can be, I don't want to say permanently, but you can do more than put a band-aid on it if you kind of do that self-reflection of, hey, who am I? Where do I want to be? What do I want to do? What is important to me? Because that for me was the prescription for that feeling of being alone in a crowded group of people.
I think one of the things I would say or add on to that is like practicing gratitude. I know we've talked about that in different podcasts as well, but like just waking up every day and just thinking about like how grateful you are for what you have, what you accomplished, rather than, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. I think starting off your day with that is just makes life a little bit more simpler, rather than having an agenda that's stressing you out as soon as you wake up.
Yeah, and that's the thing about, like that self expectation, right? Like, okay, I'm waking up today and I have to do this. I need to go here. I need to do so many tasks to feel fulfilled. But actually, something that I even practice myself is like the mini wins, right? So, okay, I made a cup of coffee. That's a win because that's going to help me through the rest of my day. I put gas in my car. Yes, that's like the most tedious little thing I could do, but I'm doing it for myself to have less stress later when maybe I'm in a rush or, I have to get to and from somewhere. So recognizing being grateful, but also just self-appreciative, tendencies of, hey, like I'm doing this, might not feel great right now, but I did something today. I accomplished something.
Yeah, there's a comedian that I just love. I might have mentioned him on here before, but Pete Holmes, he's he's funny. But in one of his bits, he talks about the secret to happiness, and for him, the secret to happiness, and I totally get this, is to redefine what a miracle is, and it's basically lower your standards for what you need to make you happy. Like, be more happy that, hey, I made it to work on time. Hey, I got up and I'm not feeling immediately sick and tired. And I think that relates to the celebrating small wins and the gratitude. And it's kind of all in the same vein of, sometimes what really helps us is just a shift in perspective and being able to enjoy the things that we take for granted.
Very true. And in terms of, it seems like at least the Western countries are breaking from the stigma of mental health. So, Ali, in perspective to your research and what you're studying, like what are you seeing? Has it become much more manageable, where like people are okay, or like professors or the students are okay talking about their own mental health with each other or in the class? So just wanted to gauge your ideas on that.
Yeah, so and I do have a background working in an Ivy League school. So I would have direct contact with students, staff, community members there. But I think sometimes it can be difficult for a student or even a professor to share about their mental health, right? Because everybody is going through something different, which is why I always say kindness and appreciation for people, even if you don't know them, is important and very crucial. We're all going through something. Um, so I haven't, like, it's like I have an answer for it, but I don't necessarily, because I've been told by students that, hey, like, I have a professor that I feel comfortable talking to. I have a academic advisor that when I'm, having difficulties with my grades, I'm I'm able to speak with them. But I've also had the other side where I've had students even tell me like, hey, like if I get an A minus, my family is not going to be happy with me. Like I'm not even going to be able to return back home. So I think it is about having the comfort and talking to people, and that comfort of, you know, being okay with not being okay, if that makes sense.
That does. Erin, I feel like you have something in your mind that you wanted to share.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm absorbing. I feel like I take up too much time anyway.
No, it's very useful information, at least from my end, being in this occupation where I can like tell my friends and family more about mental health, and then that's where they're slowly like realizing the benefits of it as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that so one of the things, and I'm going to derail this because that's my deal. But one of the things that I see a lot of in younger kids, and I love part of it, and I hate the other part of it, is that they're very open to their mental struggles and their need for mental security and their need for assurance and safety and things like that. And that is huge because when I was younger, you didn't say any of that. If you said that, like you were going to get hit. And now it's so open and I love that. The thing that I don't see is, and that bugs me, is I feel like younger kids and students have dropped the focus on mental resilience. Where, it's like, hey, we need to be mentally safe, psychological safety, and all of that, and that is great, but there's another side to it. There's the ability to push through the things that are difficult to, laugh it off, as it were. And the unfortunate realities of life is that you need to do both. You need to be able to find a place where you can be mentally safe and secure and grow as a person, but you also need to be able to just tough it out because sometimes the world sucks and you know, uh, you can't just lean into other people and be like, "Hey, make this better for me." Sorry, go ahead. I know I kind of cut you off there.
No, no, you're good. And something that a lot of people ask, is like if we're in different positions of power or we have different background experience, right? So for example, like if someone was a accountant or a very big executive at a company, right? Like one may look at them and say, well, their life is perfect. Maybe they have a high salary. Maybe they have a lot of work experience. Maybe it differs to the other person, right? So we might see as a clinician people coming in and regarding other statuses and their positions of power where they look at them as their life is great, but in reality I always say like we are all the same. We all can struggle, we all might need some assistance and some help, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think that one of the downsides, like there's a ton of downsides, there's a ton of upsides too, but I'm only going to complain about the downsides right now. To the connectivity of the world is that what we actually see from people is what they want to show us all the time. We're only seeing what they want to show us. There's no vulnerable moments because we don't have the one-on-ones as often to have those vulnerable moments. And so we always get this impression that everybody's doing better than they are, but obviously we're not because so many people, especially right now, are feeling that they need help mentally. And I think that just because you see, and don't get me wrong, there's absolutely kind of this sense of uh, people that have too much or are greedy or whatever. And I don't want to say that I don't want to get into that. But I also want to say that just because somebody seems like they have everything and they have it all together and they're you know uh have an ideal life does not mean that they're happy. Like I don't want to get sued for this, but my key example of that, I feel like, is Elon Musk. He's the richest person in the world. He never looks happy. He always looks like it's always a smirk, never a smile. I don't know if I'm the only one who sees that. Sorry. That was hilarious to me. Both of you at the same time kind of went like, but I'm not going to say anything about it. But going back to the point of everybody has something that they're going through, and just because they have everything doesn't mean that they're happy. Uh, yeah. Anyway, we are about out of time, and I just want to thank both of you for being here. I want to tell everybody who's listening, check out our other stuff that's coming up. Check out our TMTs. It's all the way up in the chat if you're interested. They're especially good for studying psychology students. We have a webinar that we're going to be releasing shortly about displacement, which is great for anybody struggling with, finding a job, losing their job, anything like that. And then we also have a webinar with Edward Jones on the 20th that is going to be very helpful for financial health and mental health. So be sure to check those out. Thanks again for watching. Thanks to Robbie and Ali for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.